All right, hello, and welcome to the Founders Breakfast, filmed for a live studio audience. That was the worst laugh track ever. So why don't we get started? I'm Bryson Bort. I'm the founder and CEO of SCYTHE.
Decloss, founder and CEO of PlexTrac.
Haroon Meer, founder, CEO of Thinkst Applied.
Landon Winkelvoss, not one of the Winkelvoss twins, founder and vice president for Nisos. We're a managed intelligence company.
Yeah, so why don't we get started? Of course, like all superhero stories, we have to begin with the origin. So when we...
Yeah, I mean, how much time we have here, right? I was a technical targeting officer with the intelligence community, really within the Central Intelligence Agency. And I had the great fortune of, working, with a lot of the offensive operations types, targeting our adversaries. And, it goes, there's a lot of different ways you can take it. You take it from the subject matter, and you can, of course, take it from just who you are really as an individual. Who I was as an individual, I just kind of was just tired of, there's people in government, government's amazing for training. You have unlimited time to train. They'll train you for 10 years. But a lot of people just managed up, right? Nobody did very well managing down. So that was after I'd done it for 10 years, I was kind of a little bit tired of that. But from the subject matter perspective, I just was, very fortunate to work around people that were a lot smarter than me. Worked around a lot of different offensive types, defensive types, threat intelligence types. And, myself and my co-founder, Justin Zeeb, we just told each other, we can just bring these people out of government. There's nothing we can't execute, really in the private sector. And of course, we can build a company, and surround ourselves with people that are much smarter than us. We can just do really amazing things. And that's what we did. We just basically, after, I met my co-founder at a dive bar in DC as it goes. You have a good idea, and took a seed round, from a family and friend round from his cousin. And that was what allowed us to quit our day jobs, right? And of course, we planned it out like that was going to, that seed money was going to last, a year to 2 years. It lasted probably about 6 months, right? And things started to get hard, and we had to, start making revenue. So long story where I'm going, we started out doing a lot of different things, right? We did pen testing, we did threat intelligence, we did incident response. We were really good at making a lot of money, and we were really good at, we were really good about making a lot of money and executing very well for our clients. We were not so good at scaling, right? And that became really hard after year 3 and year 4 to really scale. And so, for us, I'm giving the abbreviated version. Of course, there's a lot of different details in between, but after year 3 and year 4, we raised a Series A. We did not want to run a lifestyle business, right? We did not want to run a family business. We wanted something to grow where we could grow. The two of us could be replaceable. We surround ourselves with the best people, and we grow and we really dominate, the threat intelligence space, because that's where we were making a lot of our consistent revenue. And so, Justin and I, we were not scalers by any means. We had to check our ego at the door, and we had to bring in, really professional, great business people. And that's, that's what we had to do in 2020. And it's just been unbelievable, and certainly deeply humbling just to see those types of professional business people who can really grow and scale and know how to just do things that are just really important, like margins and revenue and ARR and, those types of things. And you become a better business. That's what we've had to do. So that's, that's our story. We have done we did a lot of things. So a couple of things, that can part anything. Focus is really important, right? When you can have that focus, that is really important. We did a lot of things. Doing a lot of things does not scale. Be good in 1 or 2 things. And that's what we had to do. And we had to make a lot of hard decisions around different service lines that we had to cut. I had to be good at really one thing. And that's what we've been able to do. And that's why we're really successful right now against our competitors.
Super interesting. So I'm also not one of the Winkelvoss twins. We had a pen test company in the early 2000s called SensePost, tiny South African company. We did lots of cool stuff. So we did lots of research. Like I think we presented at every Black Hat, DEF CON in our first 11 years. And it was a really good consulting business. But towards the end of it, I was really tired of consulting. Like it was hard. Like I think everyone here knows it gets super painful to maintain. And so I wanted to build a product business. We sold SensePost in 2007. 2010, I started Thinkst with the plan that we'd build a product business, but I didn't know what the product was yet. And so we had a few takes at it. We didn't raise money for a bunch of reasons. And I think that's the main reason I'm invited here is because I'm one of those founders who hasn't. And
You were also invited for your good looks. We covered this.
Yes. So we tried a few products, which most people don't know about. One of them being an early fish yourself tool, a la Fishman. And we had some growth with it, but nothing massive. And then we built Canary in 2015. And there's a really nice story that I think is worth the diversion for people who want to do product businesses. But like Ev Williams, the founder of Twitter, one of the founders of Twitter, talks about that people sometimes fetishize the myth of the struggling entrepreneur. And so you don't know how hard it's supposed to be. So like when we had our fishing product, like we had some good big name customers and it was hard, but you kind of expect it to be hard. And when we built Canary for the first time, we went, oh, that's what traction feels like people you absolutely don't know pulling the product. And I think it's useful because you sometimes can't calibrate that. But yeah, at this point, we all in on Canary for the same reason, focus. We're doing pretty well as a company, like considering we're small and started off in South Africa, we've got Canaries on all 7 continents and now don't need funding. And we have opinions on the security industry because we've been doing it for a few decades, and on building companies because that's the danger of being slightly successful is you think your opinions matter. But I will happily share them and answer any questions.
Great. Yeah. I think in terms of how there's like the aspects I think Atlanta alluded to, or when you talk about the person versus the company and the mission. And I think for me, I definitely always had kind of that entrepreneurial spirit. I think I got that from my dad. My dad and I was a baseball player growing up, didn't have a ton of money, so couldn't build a batting cage in our backyard. So couldn't buy one. So we built one. And then we decided, hey, maybe we could sell these. This is back in the late 90s, and started selling them online before e-commerce was really a big thing. And so it was kind of fun just to kind of see a little aspects of what it took to like run a business. And then also not growing up in a lot of money, seeing how it could be easier to make some money if you just have, a good business model. So that was kind of the inspiration just to be an entrepreneur. But I started my career in the DoD and wore a lot of hats in security and went into penetration testing and really hated writing reports, hated delivering reports in clunky ways, and hated the fact that I'd come back a lot later and rewrite the same report. So I felt like this was a problem that didn't seem like a lot of folks were tackling, especially in the security space, where your time is extremely valuable, and not that anybody's isn't, but there's limited resources with security folks, and so just started writing it on the side. I was risk averse in terms of didn't want to just go fund an idea, but actually have some credibility to the product and the client base, and so started it and built some company, built some rapport with customers, and then dove in full time. My plan was to do half consulting, half product at the same time, but was fortunately introduced to our seed investors who were impressed with what we were doing, and so it's not an easy path, right? Every bump along the road is unanticipated, obviously, but staying focused, having some grit and determination is important. But I think having wise grit is probably how I would phrase it, where we could see we were making a difference, people were liking what we were doing, and so that was where we were going to stay focused and not be irresponsible with our with the investment that people had made in us, but also, where are we gonna where do we truly see the growth, and then just stick to that, not care what other people think, because hey, we have customers, people like us, and we're gonna keep growing. So yeah, it's been a crazy journey, not without its struggles. I think we'll probably talk about what are some of the other things you might do differently, but all in all, we've been fortunate to continue to raise capital. We're at Series B now, and just building a great team. And I think you said it great, as well as just surrounding yourself with great people really helps, build a great company. So
Just to make sure we're on the same page, we're only going to cover some of the things we've done wrong because we're only doing this for an hour.
yeah, right.
I also like that expression you said, wise grit. And I want to come back to that at a later question. For me, I actually never wanted to be an entrepreneur. This was not something that I had on my roadmap. It was not something that when I was younger, I looked forward to and said, hey, that's something I want to be when I grow up. I feel like the world forced me to do it, because to be an entrepreneur is not about being the smartest. It's really just about that combination of, can you have the tolerance for the bullshit that you're going to put up with? And is there something that bothers you so much that it doesn't exist that you have to do it? I was always really happy being like the number 2 guy at the organization, right? I got to be smart, I got to be analytical, and then I got to watch someone else screw it up. And eventually what compelled me to start my first company, Grim, was I got at that point I actually was the top guy, but everybody still has a boss. And I had to spend more time dealing with, instead of doing fun things in the field with my people, I would have to sit around business table, boring meetings, just arguing again, every year, the same argument to do the same things. It's like, why do you make this more difficult? Well, if I do this on my own, at least I'm the problem. I'm still the problem, but that was the initial impetus. So that's when I started Grim 10 years ago. I didn't take any money. I just started by myself, one person consultant, because I figured, how hard could that be? Turns out that's really hard. And particularly when you look at pen testing as a starting business model, I think everybody sees the allure of offensive security, right? Elite hackers getting hired to do all this really cool stuff around the world. And the reality is you're basically getting 1 week projects at a time. You're in the middle of this 1 week project. You're trying to write the report while you're doing the operation, while you're still doing business development for the next one. And you have to have 3 leads in the hopper every time, because one's going to drop, one's going to go sideways, and maybe one's actually going to happen. And it's just nonstop. And then the idea for SCYTHE, again, I wasn't looking to start a product. I don't know anything about at that time. Hopefully I know something about products now, but back then I knew nothing. And in 2016, a company that rhymes with Arget came and visited me and said, hey, could you build a one-off testing tool to flex a particular edge case we have? And I was shocked. I was shocked that there was nothing in the market that already did that. And I also really appreciated it because I'm a big fan of using other people's good ideas. I'm not going to come up with all of them. And here was somebody who had done all of the work to define a market failure, because if it could be on a catalog, you better believe that enterprise procurement would have made them go buy it on a catalog versus coming to some 25-person consultancy that had a scary logo. I always had to explain the logo to the procurement people too. What is it exactly that you do? And so that was where the idea of SCYTHE was born, where I just realized, like, they'd done all the work. This just seemed like one of those things you read about in the books, that's what I was supposed to go do next. And it's been a hell of a journey doing it. So we're here at the RSA conference, and I think a lot of people have a lot of questions about the value and the ROI of conferences. And Haroon, you've published and done a lot of work really being very clear on that piece. And by the way, I saw the Twitter picture of your first time and your last time, and I can't help but notice that it looks like you spent a lot more money this time.
Yes. I think you die the hero or grow to become the villain, something. No, so we do have an interesting blog post, or at least we think it's interesting. If you are a young company pondering doing a show, in 2018, I think, which is our first show, we did it and documented all of the costs, all of that stuff. And some of it is interesting and non-intuitive. You get charged for everything is the TLDR. Like, you must have a carpet and you must take electricity and you must pay for it all. But the trade show is really good for us. Like as a young product company, we get huge value from it. And I don't know that it applies to everyone because there's quite a few shows like this year that have clearly spent hundreds of thousands so that people can play a game with their iPhone on a big monitor. And I'm not quite sure like how that translates to anything. But like for us, what happens is we get to bring our engineers out. I stand at the booth almost all the time that I'm not in meetings. And with our model, we've got lots of customers who pay us hundreds of thousands of dollars that we've never met. And so having a booth means those customers get to come, hang out, pick up a t-shirt. And what works for us super well is typically they come in and talk to us while prospective customers are there. And so they say nice things and it turns out to be nice. But yeah, so the number one thing I'd say is people should read that blog post and see if it works for them. Number two, I think if you've got a booth, you should be doing technical demos. This is a strong opinion of mine, because I think if you're not doing technical demos, if you're a product company, then what are you doing? Like I think the companies that do fancy marketing tricks and don't show the product are kind of tipping their hand that they hope to win you with marketing dollars and not an actual product that works. And yeah, again, for us, it's great. We get to see people and you get instant feedback, right? Like we normally get that all the time, but somebody coming to you in person and saying, we do this and this happens is invaluable. So young me hates it, but old me finds the trade show super useful. We actually cycle all of the engineers in the company through it. We do about 5 shows a year, one in Europe, one here. We had Gartner Sec this year, but it's super useful for the engineers to actually feel the love and get the actual feedback. So yeah, we strongly recommend it if it's done right.
I would even go more above and beyond that. People, especially when you deal with Fortune 500 enterprise and enterprise security, people want to do business with people that they trust are going to make them successful. Full stop. Right. And again, the product has to work. The service has to execute. There's no doubt about it. But I think on top of that, relationships that you built at these conferences, the in-person, dynamics, sharing these stories, because everybody has a story. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're a Fortune 500 CISO. I don't care if you're a startup founder, on whether you're enterprise security, whether you're, vendor side solution, products. Everybody has a story, and just, ultimately to build those types of relationships and learn from one another, I think is just really invaluable. Because everybody has just different advice. And when you can surround yourself with those types of people and get that type of advice, it really is, it is certainly, made Nisos. I will say that even now, then, and of course, even now, as we, look to the future, those types of things are really important as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, I love coming to conferences. I always did as a practitioner too, predominantly just because of the fact that you get to meet really smart people, and when do you have like a collection of super smart people that you can really glean a lot of information from. So that was me not only as a person and a professional, but early on, kind of did some of the guerrilla stuff like, hey, let's just go wear our t-shirts around and try to get brand awareness, right, before you can afford a booth like we can now. But I echo everything that's been said around doing it right. If your product doesn't speak for itself, you've got probably other bigger issues that are gonna cause you problems down the road. But being able to just have a collection of people that you can collaborate with and meet your customers and so it is nice being kind of back in person. But for us, we did the early stage expo back in 2020, just before the world shut down, and so that was just a good experience for us. You learn a lot. I think if there's one thing probably we all know as entrepreneurs is you're going to grow and you're going to learn, and you can't. The mistakes are how you learn the best. Typically. So what do you learn as you come to these conferences but I think I couldn't echo more about focusing on like what you do best as a company and as a product is what you're showcasing, right? Like that's people have a pain that you can solve, and that's how you really demonstrate the ROI.
I mean, the key to the conference is this is where everybody comes together. Your customers, the competitors, and it's the chance to see all of that in one condensed physical location, time space,
Right.
as opposed to the rest of the year where we have to now, at least the last 2 years, mostly just chase people over Zoom. And I know that's an area where missing the personal aspect of it is so different. Where before it was working with customers and getting to shake their hand, and you really build that initial trust and relationship, and you share and create a story together. We, I think, are known for doing all this very differently. Guerrilla marketing, it's kind of our thing. And I think we're really well known for that. We don't want a booth on the floor. Like, we're very much a LobbyCon company that finds a way to bring folks in different ways, our live studio audience, to enjoy and engage. And I think one of the tricks, though, that a lot of folks don't recognize is that we don't do that alone, right? Like, the party we threw last night was with PlexTrac and with Nisos. Sorry, Thinkst. We would have loved to have done that with you, but and I think that's an area where a lot of smalls don't recognize that you don't have to do this alone,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Together, we can go a lot further with a combined budget and combined operation and combined network that we all bring together versus trying to tackle this alone. Transitioning back to something you said about that the product should work. So the question I'm going to say is, what's the most surprising thing that you learned as an entrepreneur? And the most surprising thing I learned tied directly to that. The first salesperson we ever hired came to me after he'd been working with us for about a month or two. And he says, Bryson, your product actually works. And I was like, okay, I mean, isn't that sort of table stakes to this? And he said, no, actually, at most of the cybersecurity companies I've worked at, the product didn't work. It legitimately did not work. It took a year or two for the product to not work. And the insight I kind of came away with that is, first, and this is something I didn't realize existed, is there are a lot of enterprise customers that are out there that know they're buying something of yours as a young startup that doesn't work or doesn't work perfectly, because they're kind of seeing this is how innovation comes to the table, and they're willing to invest in that. And the sales process ties to that, where they, in fact, are selling products they knowingly know do not work. And I was surprised at that, because that's just like product first, then marketing. And it turns out in most places it's the other way around. So what's the most surprising thing that you've learned as a founder?
Oh, where do you want to begin?
Well, you get one. You get one.
You get one? Oh, boy. I'll go back to a previous point you said in terms of just like everybody. Some of my closest friends are actually our biggest competitors. There's somebody last night, they're like, why are you talking to the enemy? And I was like, that's actually one of my best friends. We compete against each other like crazy, but we also learn from each other. There's a lot of things you learn from each other, just in terms of how to manage people, in terms of how you go to market. Anybody that hasn't been in this game, don't think you need, frenemies, allies. As if you're a jerk, you're not going to go very far. So I'll just say that. Back to your question about what was your question again exactly? Sorry.
Most surprising thing.
Most surprising thing I learned as a founder. Most surprising thing was ultimately how important sales and marketing are to really truly grow. If you had asked me, 7 years ago when I started, what's the greatest achievement that you've had? I would have told you back then that the fact that we've gotten these brilliant, because I'm not a technical person, right? I was a targeter. I was an analyst. I would have told you that we were able to recruit the best technical minds to come join our team. That's what I would have told you was the greatest achievement of my own. That is fortunately, recruiting great technical talent has actually been the easiest. Humbly speaking, of course, that has actually been the easiest thing to do. The hardest thing has been truly to find brilliant sales and marketing folks that can truly scale and that can truly go from a sales and ops, because we're a services company, so we're not an engineering-led company. So a sales and ops-led company to a product management-led company, where then you're now building for the masses. That is extremely challenging to do, and it is humbling. And we have the right team, and of course, it's taken some bumps along the way, of course. But we have the right team that is executing against that, and it's just amazing how that comes together. And of course, it's come together, from our brilliant CEO, and that's worked its way down from all the VPs. I was just shocked at how critical that like next line down, those critical VPs. That is really truly what makes you grow. I was shocked by that, how important that was.
The brilliant CEO is sitting right over here in the audience as well. That's right. Hi, David.
Nice. It's a good question. I think the most surprising thing for me is that certainly with our business, that there's no laws of physics. So there are lots of things that are taken as true or taken as laws of nature that actually aren't. And that's when it comes, I'm not picking on your answer, but when it comes to sales or marketing or just about anything, like Doug Song, who led Duo and led a few things, often talks about how they made Duo, they try to engineer around everything. So they said the company should engineer solutions for everything. And one of the things that I'm super grateful for, like we didn't know would work, is that we attack almost everything as an engineering problem. And that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be cold and unthinking, but like sales is an engineering problem for us, and marketing's an engineering problem. And how we scale communication in the org as we get bigger is an engineering problem. And for lots of those things, there's kind of established doctrine over the years that say like, well, you've got reasonable product market fit. You now need to get a bunch of salespeople who are coin operated, and all you've got to do is set these targets and they'll go do that. And we've been really lucky that we've been able to get opportunities to try stuff and then see how it works. And so like we cleared 11 million ARR like 2 years ago, and we've still just got one salesperson. And that's pretty unheard of. We've got no marketing department. And it's not us trying to be deliberately contrarian. It's just that for lots of those things, we get to go like, well, what if we did it this way? Because it makes sense to me. And what if people don't want to be sold to this way? Like if we offer it this way, will it work? And yeah, so I think the single takeaway that kind of surrounds all of that is that none of those things are laws of physics, and you can experiment past it. But I think for young companies, the caveat for that is always you can't fight too many battles. And so if you're trying to be innovative with your product and also trying to be innovative with your sales process and also trying to invent a new pricing structure, you're going to wind up in trouble. I think almost all company/startup advice is that it's all about the end. Like you've got to do this and this and this. But yeah, it's one of those things that's been most surprising. And we're a little lucky that like sometimes you try stuff and the market kicks you in the teeth despite your good intentions. And like we've tried stuff and we've generally been rewarded. So it gives us confidence to try more stuff. And so until we get kicked in the teeth, we happily trying new stuff and hopefully get it right.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously you just learn a lot, and I think if you have that growth mentality, coming into this, it helps you with the perseverance. I think there's probably some misconceptions around, from my experience, around just like the struggling entrepreneur. I think is that you're going to get a lot of no's, and you're going to get a lot of defeat, and you're going to and to an extent that is true. There's going to be people that are always going to be the skeptics, but what surprised me was how many people were cheering in my corner too. Like they would give of their time freely, lawyers, and I just go take them for coffee and they would just give me free advice, and so that really surprised me. So like, I don't know if you want to call it like the goodness of humanity and things like that. But I think that surprised me because you kind of come into it like, okay, it's me against the world kind of a thing. And how do I rally people around? And so, one thing I just learned is that, if you be yourself and you be genuine, people will, the right people will help you, and then you'll also attract, good talent that way. So I think that was one thing that kind of, was inspiring to me as I kind of started getting going, was just how willing people were to be in the corner and to help you along the way, knowing that you are struggling. There's always the things on your shoulders, but people that are willing to support you and help you and answer questions. So like that was really inspiring and something I learned early on to find the people that are willing to help, and then learn from the no's. Why did that person not like our product? Why, what was their critique, and not take it from like, well, they're stupid, or, I'm they don't know what they're talking about, but truly like, hey, no, they are someone that has an opinion as well. And what do we learn from that to continue to move the product forward? So.
Well, Dan, you went right into my next question, which is, as the founders who are there in the trenches, in the arena, actually doing the work, it's funny how many people not in the arena have an opinion about what we're doing, and how often it's stupid. So, what is the worst advice you've ever been given?
Worst advice. Worst advice ever given was that human resources kills companies, because that was absolutely that could not be farther from the truth. I would say, look, I mean, when you so many people talk about go-to-market strategy is the most important thing, and strategy, and that's all hugely important. I'd say that's probably 40% of the equation. 60% of the equation is just getting the smartest people in the room to work together. I mean, that has just been, and just how do you deal with a CFO that wants to be a CEO? How do you deal with a COO who wants to be a future CEO or wants to be an investor? How do you keep them on the train long enough to get the right levels of growth? Like that never is at the same, and that's obviously at the executive suite. Then of course, even at the the people who are young professionals, they're going to want to move and shake, right? In terms of their career growth, you can't do that without process, right? You can't do that without accountability. I mean, it just does not work, especially when you get to be over 50 people. When you get to be over 50 people, I mean, you have to have process in terms of what you do and how you grow people. And that goes. And I was when someone told me that a long time ago, that HR is just fundamentally going to kill your company. Like I didn't believe it. I was like, I don't know what planet they were living on, because again, we didn't have HR at the time, right? It was Justin and myself, like, don't hire HR. Don't hire. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to take that advice. And we didn't hire HR obviously for a long time, to be very honest. It wasn't until probably a year and a half in, 2 years in, from when we raised capital that we hired human resources. That was the worst, probably the worst advice I've probably ever received.
So the worst advice received is, it, like everything else, takes us on an interesting tangent, because like this time I won't name him, but like there's a really smart person in the security industry who's given us tons of great advice that was all great. And very early on when we were doing Canary, said to me, don't. He said, look, we tried honeypots in the 2000s. People don't adopt it for these reasons. Don't do it. We did, and it's done okay for us. And the main reason why I think the anecdote is interesting, because I think like I would listen to this person 10 out of 10 times. Like I'd cross the road to go attend a talk that they've given. But like all advice, as a founder, like one of the big VCs talk about founders spending time in the idea maze of the problem. Like you are spending day and night for years and sometimes decades thinking about your problem space. Most people who give you advice, even really smart people, have thought about it for about 2 minutes. And so on the one hand, you've got to learn to take advice and listen to people. But on the other hand, you've got to know when you've got reasons to think you should try it anyway. And the main thing historically that we've done for that sort of stuff is, if the advice comes from a source you trust and has gravitas or weight, you maybe put markers down so that you can evaluate it quicker. Like I think it should be X. He says it's Y. I'm going to start checking more frequently to see if the roads diverge. But yeah, so the advice was, don't build honeypots. We did, and it's going pretty well for us.
Yeah, that's a hard one for me, because I think I probably tried to have just blocked out a lot of the bad advice. It's like, oh, that is a really stupid comment or something like that. But and not trying to offend folks that are genuinely trying to at least what you think help. I think there's certain people you kind of come across where you're like, this person is not in the mode of helpful at all, right? Like, but I think there was one time early on when you're trying to kind of nail messaging, and this was in the context of talking to an investor, and this person was like, oh, don't ever use these words, right? Like, don't ever mention these words. And I learned the hard way that you should just be yourself, right? When you come into like, meetings with anybody, right? I mean, like, just be genuine and not try to fret around like things you shouldn't say in any kind of meeting, whether that's with a prospect or a client I mean, obviously there's, to a degree, but I was so focused on these meetings around like, oh, I can't mention this word because that's a marker for, lack of scale or something like that. And at the end of the day, that's garbage, right? I mean, it's like the people that will want to invest in you, whether it's through, them licensing your product or investing in your company, they will do their diligence, right? So they'll find the answers that they need. And so just be genuine about who you are as a company and as a person. And I think that goes a long way. And that's definitely something that I learned the hard way by listening to somebody that gave me bad advice.
What's the worst advice you ever got?
It was around sales, and there was two aspects of it. One was when we were pre-revenue, folks were like, well, you need to get in with the resellers. And I remember...
Yeah, that is bad advice. Yes.
That's terrible. Yes.
Because how resellers actually work is not that they're going to go out and be like, I'm so glad I met Dan. I mean, I was just sitting and waiting. I have these other 500 vendors that are already in my catalog, but when Dan came along, it was like the heavens had parted, and now I knew my purpose in life. And I can't wait to go out on my own and sell Dan's stuff. As opposed to, well, actually, I already have a catalog of 500 things, and pretty much I own these procurements at these places, and they just call me up and be like, what am I buying this year?
Right.
Resellers are a dynamic where they come, it all goes to them, right? And so I remember this because he was actually an RSA, and I had a meeting with the head of Optiv.
Right.
And I was like, this isn't that hard. I've got the guy at the top, and the guy, he even canceled his next meeting because we ran over. Like, his chief of staff was coming, like, trying to grab him away, and he was like, no, I'm staying with this. And so I mean, how could I have not felt like this had gone any better? It is 4 years later, and I still do not have an official relationship with Optiv. Because again, it's you have to be where they come to you, because the market has already, that's where the market is, right? And the other thing that I resent about this, and I think this is a part that we can all empathize with, is we get an opportunistic relationship with the VAR. We get a transactional one where the customer says, I'm buying this. They're going to be where you have to do it. Go give them 10 points. Like, what? Why do I have to give them money? They're just showing up and passing the paperwork. Why can't we do this directly? But 10 points is typically worth 6 to 12 months of time. Yeah. The second that ties into that on sales was folks pushing me to hire salespeople early and quickly. And what I've learned is I don't think, and I actually gave this advice to a company I just angel invested in called Binarly last night. 2 technical founders, and I was like, you're going to have to be the salespeople. And they're like, well, I don't know how to do that. I was like, I was in the same boat in 2016. I didn't know how to do sales either. I spent 2 to 3 years doing it wrong until I eventually figured it out. So about 500 no's before I started becoming a good salesperson. And the trick there is because you can't hire somebody else to do it.
Right.
I mean, you talk about scale. It's not really, I think, until post A round where you've really got enough traction to have a real product market fit. Whatever you thought product market fit was before, it's not true.
Right.
That's where you'll have it, so that you can, in fact, give it to this process, which that person starts to represent. They don't know this stuff as well as you do. They don't know the idea maze anywhere close, because that's not their job. So those are the 2 pieces of bad advice that I think I got. Continuing this trend of everything going wrong, feel like that's the founder experience. You just
I think it's not only understanding what goes wrong, because like the founder's journey is a lot what goes wrong.
Yeah.
I think it is always a balance of like being known for what you've been successful for,
right,
and balancing that with the founder's founders struggle with that, with what has gone wrong.
So what was your biggest mistake ever?
Biggest mistake ever. I mean, where do you want to begin, right? Biggest mistake ever was.
Does it have to be that big?
Yeah. So let me think about
Dan, what is a medium mistake you're happy to be slightly vulnerable with?
Yeah. No, I think, we were kind of, it's interesting when we talk about, human resources. And I think some of the biggest mistakes we've made is not trusting our gut on certain hiring decisions. There's a certain component, like with hiring, as you grow, you want to have a systematic approach to hiring, and you want the candidates to have, as objective as a process as possible, right? But then there is that gut component, and I think on the hires that we've had where they passed all the marks, right, and they but there's something did not feel right, but we went ahead and hired them anyway. Those were mistakes, right? And so there's a component to trusting your gut in as objective a way as possible. And I think there's definitely been some hires that we've had where it's like, okay, let's do it and let's try it, and then that didn't work out very well.
I think the biggest mistake, I'll go on that note, was not when we raised the A round and we had to officially grow up. It was not hiring a real business person as like the number 2 or 3. That was probably our biggest mistake, easily. I really even back that because I was talking to one of our biggest competitors last night. And I asked point blank, like, how have you adapted and survived so long? Because he's been CEO for 12 years now. I was like, how have you done? He's like, I always had a brilliant number 2. And he brought that brilliant number 2 in when they were probably like 3 or 4 years old, right? That was easily our biggest mistake, not to. We needed that business killer, for lack of better words, to be there, to really truly start to grow and scale.
I was hoping you don't look at me. So
I can go back to him for he can do another one.
He can do another mistake.
Could you do his mistake for us?
Go. Here's Haroon's biggest mistake.
So probably the biggest, I'd actually say, was pre-starting Thinkst. And it's funny because I thought about this recently when I was on a podcast. I think we waited. So personally, I waited too long to start a product company. So like you, I was a reluctant entrepreneur. Like, I wanted to be the best researcher I could be. I wanted to publish research. And we did consulting. So I did it for 11 years. And I think I should have done a product company after 5. I think I stayed with that too long because consulting, like in our line of work, is really it's really attractive. Like, financially, you do well. It gives you all the dopamine hits because every engagement, like on the one hand, they short engagements, but on the other, you're the smartest person in the world every 2 to 4 weeks. And it's really hard to break out of that cycle to work on something that doesn't give you either the dopamine hits or the money. And we complained about the vendor space being terrible for a long time. I wish we'd throw our hat in the ring earlier. And I think part of that is, so we're a South African company. We're away from Silicon Valley, away from the States. And it gives us a bunch of advantages. But I think one of the disadvantages that showed up there is we didn't have that urgency that we maybe would have if we were up here. So yeah, it's not huge, but like, if there's a regret, I think and some of us lost like 5 years of good product building by staying in consulting too long.
What do you define as success?
Well, let me share how I fucked up first.
Yeah, please.
Yes.
Don't let me off the hook.
That's fair.
Right? You got to give me a disappointed dad look. So no shit, there I was.
Yeah, right.
I think people toss around the idea of innovation incorrectly, and this is where my mistake was. Is to be truly innovative means you're doing something that nobody understands and does not exist. And what does that mean in terms of money? It means there's no money for it. You talked about wise grit. I think I spent 5 years doing stupid grit. The only thing that existed in my category at the time was a B2C red team product. I built the first business to business red team product. That market category today still does not exist. There is no budget for it. All of our success has been me fighting a system in a market that does not exist. That does not scale. That is not an addressable market. And so I think the biggest mistake that I made was really not understanding truly what addressable market was, not recognizing how fighting fluid dynamics is I'm swimming upstream. I need to find a way to go with the stream. And I think a lot of people take that for granted, where you think you'll just build it and they will come to it.
Right.
And in the best circumstances, if you're 100% right, that means there'd be money in 3 years, right? Because they need to be exposed to the idea, then they need to get into the annual cycle next year to put the budget for it, which means then the following year, there's actually money for what you want to do. If you are building something that does not exist, because it's not defined in the business operation for them to even be able to access it. That's the system. And so that was my biggest mistake.
Let's peel that back, because I'll push back on that slightly.
Sure.
Right. If we all had unlimited budget and time, right? If I could do this all over again, right, I would hire Virginia Case in the back there, and I would say, I got an idea. Before I start anything, let's research this idea, define the market, define what the product is, what the buyer is, all those things. I will do that before I even start a business. But nobody does that. Nobody has unlimited budget time. I don't come from money, right? I can't not take a salary for a year to 2 years while I figure it out. No, I got an idea. I can execute. I can go out and find a couple clients. I can go make relationships with great guys like Dave Ruger over there, and I can, I can sell. That's usually how that works. And then the challenging part is then now you get to now that all of a sudden, oh wow, there needs to be budget for this. There needs to be, you need to fit into a lane. Like, we want to be an intelligence company. Well, what does that mean? You can actually solve a business problem. You got to actually align to who your buyers are. Oh, I'm targeting the CISO. No, the CISO doesn't have any time. Who's actually the person who's going to consume and has a budget line item, right? And then now you're like, okay, oh wow, I got to do this at 5 customers. Now I got to do this at 30 customers. Now I got to do this at 1,000 customers, right? And that takes just significant discipline. So, I would slightly push back on that you can't. That's how everything starts to some degree, right? It's an idea. I can do this better, and there might not be a market, a defined market. That's how a lot of we can go through all different kinds of ideas, particularly in security, about their market. And there's no EDR market 10 years ago. It was an antivirus market. And of course, somebody said, well, I want to do it better, right? So I don't know if I would completely, I hear you what you're saying, but I would maybe use that a little slightly differently.
Who's doing it better? Never mind. Just picking the EDR market.
Hey, antivirus is EDR, but add another zero, right? That's where that market is. So you were about to ask the question on
what do you find success? How do you find success for you?
So I've always used the metaphor of what we do as we are predators in the Serengeti, and most of it is the dry season. And so I define success as surviving till it rains, and that grit to continue, and the wisdom, because part of it is not just that you don't give up, but the wisdom to find any little pocket of an antelope here or that little bit of water there that gets you to when that rainy season will happen. And some of us do give up along the way, because every one of us has faced the point, I think, where we didn't think it was going to go further, but we somehow made it through that. And so to me, I continue to define success as my idea continues to be able to have a team behind it to see it be real in the market.
I think it's a deep question, right? But I think for me personally, one of our core values is positively impact people. And what I say to the company is like that's in any interaction we have with whoever it is, whether it's a vendor or a partner or a customer or an investor, that they walk away from us thinking, hey, those people, I have a positive experience with them, whatever that means, and taking interest in their lives, or sending them one of our customers had a baby recently, so like sending them a baby gift and things like that, small things that matter. But I think for me, what defines success is that we've built a company that can sustain some more turmoil and market conditions to be able to make an impact in people's lives. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what I care about most, is that we've built a team that we're helping them build futures for themselves, and we're making a difference in the industry to give people time back and to be have more morale, and so that's what I define success as, and it plays into, hey, that's what motivates us to keep going, right? And to say like, hey, we are making a difference in people's lives in small ways, because when you get to the end, that's at the end of the day, that's what matters most.
Now you're looking at me.
It's like, that's a good one.
Right. Look, of course, from a strategy perspective, I want to dominate the threat intelligence market, right? So that's certainly, a large part. I think at a very core personal level, somebody told me a long time ago, they're like, the two companies that really started security consulting were a company called Foundstone and At Stake. Oh, yeah. And so everybody that is anybody in cybersecurity generally now came from one of those two companies. And that has always still resonated with me. And it resonates with me because people that come and join Nisos, I want them to be the next people that dominate. That's how I've kind of have seen success. When people that they're proud they came from Nisos, and everybody was like, okay, that person's top notch. And when they're in the room, they can say that. That's when I know that I've had success.
I think the answer changes as you go along the way. Like genuinely, when it was just Marco and I, and we were trying to find a product, like our operating principle was do cool stuff and not die. Like so our intention was like, can we do cool things and not die? And then it became like, can we build a thing that people would actually want to pay for? Can we build a thing that people would actually want to renew? And like as time goes by, like it literally changes, because like initially, like when we sold to our first 20 or 30 customers, like in the back of my mind, I was worried that like we had a pretty good reputation and people generally like us, or they say they do. And I was worried, like, are people just buying the stuff because they like us? Like, is it genuinely adding value? And so then the thing became like, okay, will people renew? And like initially we were really lucky with the people who joined us. But as a bootstrap company, you kind of take what you can get and fight with the army that you have. And like as time goes on, we now get to really pick people. Like we get DARPA quality researchers joining us. And so the target becomes like, can you build this beautiful learning organization where learning spreads across the org? So I think it's constantly changing. And I think an important rule for founders is to make sure you take the moments to enjoy the wins. Because I think everyone's mentioned you take a lot of punches along the way. And as founders, you're always looking for the next thing, right? Like you do X and then like, well, what's Y and how can we do it better? And so I think it's important along the way to take note that says like, hey, we couldn't afford this booth last time. And now like we've flown a dozen people here. Or even if it's not monetary, like, hey, people actually want to work with us now. They think we're not complete monkeys. So yeah, I think it shifts, and I think people should celebrate it along the way.
So I think we got time for one question from the audience.
Yeah, who's got questions for sure?
Jerry.
It's going to be the bootstrap Haroon one, right? But I think everybody will be able to jump on that. You pros and cons of taking external money, right? Well, one of the obvious cons, I think, or let's say perceived cons, is that you're working on somebody else's timeline. You got a lot of pressure and go. What I'm curious about is when you're bootstrapping, on the other hand, and cash flow, maybe your only real immediate pressure. Did you find that psychologically you still had the pressure and that you're pushing and you feel like, damn it, we got to get out next month or we're going to lose? And was it true, or did it give you any freedom?
Yeah, it's a super good question. I think there's no doubt there is some freedom, like not having to answer to a board early on with that stuff. In our case, for example, we do a free product that, like in December, the free product was used 3 million times. And as a company, we've got zero pressure to monetize it because that's my choice. And I think any sane investor at that point would be asking questions for why we're not spending time monetizing that. And I don't think we have to, and so we don't. But I also want to add the caveat and the opposite end to that, which is not all that pressure is bad. And I think much of the benefit of taking VC money, and people don't discuss this often, but I think taking VC money, for one thing, adds a level of governance to a company that's not terrible. But it also gives you milestones that companies do need to hit. So Brent mentioned earlier the problem with not wanting to be a lifestyle business, and if we ignore the pejorative like that most people use around lifestyle businesses, it's very easy to get stuck and comfortable with, well, you've got 200 customers, they're paying everyone's bills, you're getting to do cool stuff. And normally, if you have a VC breathing down your neck at that point, it forces you to level up. And funding rounds, while the announcements on LinkedIn are generally annoying because they're so vacuous, the funding rounds give you punctuations to level up your company. So like at seed stage, everyone's working on the product. We raised an A, okay, we need some leadership. Like we raised a B, okay, it's time to get the sales team doing this stuff. And if you haven't raised or aren't raising, you've got to be very deliberate to not miss those steps, because some of them exist because they help your company exist, like they help it to win. So yeah, I think there is freedom, but I think some of that pressure is good if you want to grow. And so if you're not doing it with a VC, you should find a way to fake it. Because it's good.
All right. Well, Landon, Haroon, Dan, thank you for joining me on my hijinks.
Thanks for putting this together.
Yeah,
Thanks so
Well
much. It's
done.
been cool.
Appreciate it.
Sorry for putting you down.
What's that?
I say sorry for